Ventilators, masks, gloves. This is the protective gear that healthcare workers and patients desperately need but can't seem to get. As the coronavirus pandemic dries up supply chains abroad, there's a new imperative demand to manufacture these products at home. And we keep hearing about the Defense Production Act.
We will be invoking the Defense Production Act.
Defense Production Act.
Defense Production Act.
The president invoked it to compel General Motors and a number of companies to speed up the production of ventilators. He also invoked it to prevent 3M from exporting medical supplies to other countries. But what can the Defense Production Act actually do? And where does it come from? Well, the Defense Production Act was enacted in 1950 to give the Truman administration broader authority to set domestic economic policy during the Korean War. The DPA emerged out of the First and Second War Powers Act of 1941 and 1942, which allowed the White House to compel American companies to produce things like tanks and weapons during World War II. The meaning and scope of national defense has since been expanded by Congress to more broadly encompass domestic preparedness for any emergency, like a terrorist attack or a natural hazard, or like today, with coronavirus. The DPA is not a permanent law. It has to be continuously reauthorized, which it has been in one form or another more than 50 times.
A bill to extend the expiration date of the Defense Production Act of 1950.
The DPA initially had 7 titles. Now, 3 remain. Title 1, Priorities and Allocations, which allows the president to force companies, like in this case GM, to not only take on, but also prioritize federal contracts to produce services or products deemed essential for national defense. Title 3, Expansion of Production Capacity and Supply, which allows the federal government to give the private sector economic incentives or protections to mitigate the risk of expanding production for national defense. And Title 7, General Provisions. This enables a series of authorities, like the authority to block foreign mergers and acquisitions if deemed a threat to national security, or the authority to call experienced industry leaders to serve the government. While we're hearing a lot about the DPA now, it's far from the first time it's being enacted. It's not even the first time the Trump administration has enacted it. In fact, a report submitted to Congress in 2019 showed that the DPA was used as justification for lots and lots of contracts. And within the contracts, actual orders. The Department of Defense, for example, quote, places approximately 300,000 rated orders each year, and other agencies have in the past been given the authority to use the DPA as well, and have routinely done so. For example, the Department of Homeland Security used it more than 1,300 times in 2018, in large part for disaster response and hurricane recovery. Those orders range from what may seem like everyday government contracts, like prioritizing contracts for tanks and other weapon systems, but also have included mandates in times of crisis for disaster responses, like in 2017 when the government prioritized contracts for food and bottled water and shelter in Puerto Rico during Hurricane Maria. And both Republican and Democratic presidents have invoked the DPA. For example, in 2003, during the Iraq War, then President Bush used the DPA to prioritize the supply of GPS receivers to British troops in Iraq. In 2012, the Obama administration used the DPA to bolster the biofuel industry, as American reliance on oil was seen as a military vulnerability. So, the use of the DPA is not uncommon, and there's context for why it could help the United States create a holistic response to COVID-19 when supply chains have been upended. But time will tell if it'll be used to respond to COVID-19 in a similar way that it's been routinely used to respond to other crises the country has faced in the past.
Hey NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.